Welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host Rashid, and we're trying to get a link going so that my co-host Rashid can enter the building. But until then, we're going to just chop it up. We're going to go into the news and we're going to dissect what is going on. And also, I will always like to say thank you first and foremost to God for allowing us all to wake up to see another day and to be in good health and good strength, and also to have our loved ones around us and to have the basic necessities of life. I like to thank God for all those wonderful blessings that we overlook, and especially in these times of tribulation, these times of uh, I would say trials and purification. Put it like that. We'll say purification, due to the fact that the world is headed for total collapse. The world that we know, the world that we have been in, that we've been living in, is collapsing. The greatest pillar of Western power, the greatest pillar of the Western world, which is America, is under tremendous strain. She's under tremendous strain. She's falling, and the whole world is looking at her falling. Now, they might not want to acknowledge the fall, but there is no denying that the fall is underway. We can see it in all of the economic, political, socio, ethical, moral, and technological barometers. We can see her decline in everything: educational standard, her economy, her employment, her housing, her cultural and educational discourse. Militarily, we're seeing her being challenged on every front. And you see me looking down because I'm still trying to send a link out to my co-host because I've been sending links out for the last day or so, and been sending them through the emails, and he hasn't gotten them again. So we know what that's about. So I see him in the booth, and I'll bring him in just a second. But again, I want to say that there is no doubt about it because today is, Tuesday's news grind. So we're going to try to fit in a lot of stuff and try to make sure that you understand that the collapse is underway. I mean, it's not to come 15 years from now, 25 years from now. It's not to come 5 years from now. It's not. No, it is underway as we speak. So before we get into the news, because I have a lot to bring up, I want to bring in my co-host Rashid. And I got to say on you, man. How's it going today?
Going just fine, brother. Going just fine.
Yeah. Is there any particular subject that you want to address in this news, whether it be Pakistan, whether it be Iran, whether it be the growing unemployment here, whether it's the mass shootings that continue to ravage America? Well, I want to speak on a mass shooting. Isn't it amazing that America is being forced to suffer disgrace in the entire in front of the entire world as she tries to dictate to others democracy and tries to dictate to others ethical and moral codes. Home, she's collapsing, and we see that not even in the church are you saved. They'll come in and they'll blow the preacher house down, and we see this is not these are not isolated incidents. These are incidents that are taking place on a almost daily basis around the country. What say you on that?
Yeah, it's very interesting about that, brother. But you know how the thing, how everything goes here. It's par for the course for America on her fall. That's all that is. But what's happening with Pakistan with Khan? Have you heard anything about that?
Not really. I heard that he called off his Islamabad rally. Um, Somebody told me that it was due to his life, and I think there's a upboiling right now because the military cannot position. They don't control the reins. They're used to giving orders to the politician and giving orders to everybody. And now with the grassroots movement that's back in Khan, they just can't do him any kind of way. You understand? And this is a reflection of America's policy. Because remember, America and Great Britain are the ones who helped to overthrow him, and they speak about democracy. When he was elected, by the masses of the Pakistani people. And then when he wouldn't play ball by American and Britain standards, they hit up their corrupt officials in and some corrupt elements in the Pakistani military and the intelligence apparatus to oust Khan. And now the groundswell of support for Khan is now forcing the military to reevaluate and also forcing the politicians of Pakistan to do a double take. So they thought that they could assassinate Khan, and that didn't work. And all that did was bring more people to Khan's side. And I believe there was a recent poll that says 85 to 89% of the people of Pakistan are backing and they want him back into office. And they said that this was an illegal coup against Pakistani so-called democracy by Israel, the United States, and the UK. What say you on that?
Well, you know, they tried to do that with what's her name, Benazir Bhutto. They just want,
yeah.
But this is a day they pull that stuff off on Khan like they did with her when she went back. She went back and they just outright somebody just shot her. Well, they tried to pull it on Khan, but it didn't work because time is against it. Time brings about a change for all things. For democracy, for Western, you know, democracy for the rest of the planet. You got a puppet leader in there bowing down, doing everything America and England want. If you're not a so-called democracy under their rule, you're a dictator for
yeah.
But you know that democracy and that it's time for the UN to go to the waste bin where it belongs.
I say that part again.
It's time for the UN to go. You know, the Western-backed organization called the UN. It's time for the rest of the world to get together and ignore that organization because it benefits nobody but America and NATO and the Western world. If you want to get your agenda on, you can't be a second-rate fiddle in their organizations. It's time to get rid of it. It need to go where the old League of Nations is in the dustbin of history.
I want to let the people know that StreamYard and YouTube are playing with the audio again and the video. They're pausing the stream, and also they are disconnecting Rashid in the middle of his talking. See how we go through this all the time. You would think that we, right? But this is to let you know that what we're saying is the truth. This is to let you know that they don't want one inkling of truth, small channel. Why are they so concerned with such a small channel? Why are they so concerned with the audience that we have? Because they don't want you to understand the situation at hand. That first, we are looking at the change of worlds. We're looking at the collapse of American power and the American Republic and the American Empire, which by extension means the collapse of the British Empire. And this also by extension means the total collapse of European power. This is what we're watching. We're watching the total collapse of the Western world. I cannot stress this enough. We are watching the total collapse of the Western world, and America being the pillar of power in America. I want to go to something while we have a chance to. And if you see a lot of smoke coming on, this is sage and Nak Champa. I usually have that burning in the background to cleanse the any negative energy or whatever like that. You know, I don't like negative energy around me. So, but I wanna go to something, and we'll tie this in with American policy, and we'll tie this in of the Western world, because this, remember, if we're going to watch the collapse of the Western world, we have to look at all of the signs which bear witness to the growing fissures and the greatest pillar of power of the Western world, which is America. When we look at that column, that weight-bearing wall, we have to look at it for what it is and what is going on in it. It shows signs that if America falls, because remember, Western power is an extension of American power. This is why America has NATO. This is why even after America talking to her so-called allies, like their children and their junior partners, this is to take it, because they also benefit from American military might. They also benefit from the American dollar being the world reserve currency. But at home, America is suffering, and she's suffering bad. I want to read something to you. We're going to go back to one of our blogs that we read on economics. And you know, this is the economic collapse blog that we're reading on. And don't forget to sign up to our locals, the empowerment of truth.locals.com. Go to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Red Pill Diaries. Hit the like button on here, subscribe on here on both the Red Pill Diaries and the Red Pill Journals on YouTube. Also, and it's all one word, the Red Pill Diaries, the Red Pill Journals. Go to Odyssey and sign up for the Red Pill Diaries on Odyssey, Twitch. It's a couple of more platforms. I'm trying to familiarize myself with what my son set up. But anyway, in this article, it is titled, "It is beginning." It is beginning. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means that something is starting. Now, if something is just starting, we got to look at what's the prelude to the start. When we look at the robbing of the current in the 60s up to the 70s, then we look at completely robbing the backing of the dollar in 71 by Richard Nixon. Then we look at the crises that were taking place in the early 80s. Some of you are too young to know that. And then the crisis in the 90s. And then we see go into the 2000s and how they removed the Glass-Steagall Act and all of these other acts. And then you started seeing a breakdown in the economic structure from 2004 upwards to the day 2000, and we had 2008 crisis, the 2010 crisis, the 2014 crisis, the 2016 crisis, all the way up to the day. We've seen all of that, right? If all of those things were preludes, because if they had preludes, if what we're reading says it is beginning. So what we want to learn is what is beginning. He's talking about the economic rot, the downward spiral of businesses, right? Right. Now remember, without the businesses, you have no tax base. You have no tax base. How can you justify budget deficits and spending? Listen to what it says. It is beginning. It is beginning. Excuse me. It says 41% of all small businesses pay rent in November. Now this is a telltale sign of the economic rot that is America. Okay, let's read a little bit. And it says, many experts are now warning that we could see the housing market and the commercial real estate market simultaneously crash in 2023. The only way we will avoid such a fate is if the Federal Reserve starts reducing interest rates. Unfortunately, that isn't going to happen. In fact, officials at the Federal Reserve keep telling us that interest rates are going to keep going up. This is literally a suicidal course of action because higher rates are going to absolutely crush the economy. If you doubt this, just consider what is already happening. According to a new alignable survey that was just released, 41% of all small business owners in the United States could not pay their rent in November. Due to high inflation, reduced consumer spending, higher rents, and other economic pressures, the U.S.-based small business owners' rent problems, just escalated to new heights nationally this month, based on Alignable's November rent poll of 6,326 small business owners taken from November 19th of this year to November 22nd of this year. It says, unfortunately, of US-based small business owners report that they could not pay their rent in full and on time in November. Making matters worse, this occurred during a quarter when rent delinquency rates should be decreasing. But so far, this quarter, the opposite has. I'm going to read a little bit more, then I'm going to bring Rashid in and get his take on what we see happening. Okay, and it says, in September, the same survey found that 30% of all small business owners could not pay their rent. So now we have an 11% rise in business owners from month on month. From that point, in September to November, a 11% rise in delinquencies and business owners being able to pay their rent. It says many were deeply alarmed by that figure, and then it jumped to 37% in October. Now we are at 41%. And if there is any time when small business are to pay rent, it is during the holiday season. When commercial real estate can pay rent, it inevitably has a domino effect. Stop right there. Your take on what is being said here when we look at the explosive situation that those black swans that are teetering on going supernova, which is the housing market, and small business owners rent. What say you, Rashid, on this situation, and what does this say about America's economic prosperity and America's economic future?
Well, you know, some of the small businesses and the large businesses, they make their whole year's profit on Christmas. That's why it's set up there so much so to Christmas and these holidays. That's how they make all of their money, by pushing people to buy stuff. And if their economic base is being taken out from under them, then that shows you the state of the country. The goods and services that come into side of America are dwindling. Didn't you say earlier that a lot of China's products are being shipped somewhere else? The ship being coming completely directly to America. Yeah, they're going to somewhere else, and it's going to get more.
Yeah,
more and more and more and more. Well, you see this for yourself. To the supermarket the other day, and you know, normally where they have water, where you can buy a little bottle of nothing. The whole shelf was going. Mm-hmm. You go to your store, you find that's just going out of business. When the supermarket or whatever store it's products is a breaking down of the goods and services in America. And as for how he is in a catch-22 because his currency is no good. This is what people don't understand. His currency is worthless. Matter of fact, the monopoly money is better than the American dollar. At least you get something for the American dollar. The American monopoly money, the American dollar, they just go on a computer and punch it in and say, okay, that's how much money I got. It's the collapse of the society, and what we're trying to tell people is headed right at your doorstep. It's not the company, like you said, 25 or 30 years in the future. It's at your doorstep. And if you don't prepare yourself, You're gonna get caught into
Yep.
this economic collapse. It's gonna be nothing. It is a total collapse of the American society, which she didn't rule for so long, and now it's her time to get her comeuppance.
Yeah, but when we're looking at that and we see that the shelves are empty, it seems like people are still unaware that things are not going to return to the way they thought they were or they used to be. And I was thinking, I don't eat beef and chicken and all that stuff. And I remember I used to eat turkey breast. That was the one, I guess you could call it, fowl or meat that I would eat. And I would always go and get 5 or 6 packs of turkey breast from Walmart and put it and freeze it. Do you know, in the last 2 years, I don't know how it is your way, but it's been at least 2 years here since we've seen turkey breast in the store. 2 years, and that shows you that there is a collapse underway, but most people aren't aware of it. When you look in the stores and you see goods, well, you look for certain goods and you don't see them, and you have to go to 3 and 4 different grocery stores just to get some of the goods that you were able to get at one store. And then you see all of these mergers of stores. Some of them are about to go belly up, and they're trying to mask the collapse. So what they're trying to do is just like they did with the bank system. When the banks were going belly up, and you saw, and people were like, "Oh, it was only 10 banks went bankrupt this month." But yeah, you didn't tell us how many branches did that bank have. So yeah, we look at one bank, and that bank might have 60 branches. And then if 10 goes bankrupt, then that's 600. In reality, that's 600 branches that went belly up in a month. So, and then you saw these mergers of banks and mergers of corporations to keep the people's eyes on what was really going on and what is really going on, which is a total economic meltdown. And they continue to try to kick the can down the road. But Naeem 88 says those sound like tremors to the breaking up of America's hegemony, as you always tell us, brother. This is what is happening. Listen, it's not just the breakup of America's hegemony. What we're looking at is the collapse of an entire world order. This is why just a few days ago, and we say this on the show, but it was reiterated a few days ago, where it was reported again a few days ago, that Joe Biden acknowledges that a new world order is coming in. He acknowledged that, right? But he said that America must lead the new world order. But then what's the use of having something new? If the old is, I want you to understand something. If the old is going to rule the new, then they will just make it into the old. So why would you waste the time to build the new? Because remember, to have something new, it must not be inculcated with the same ideas of the old. Because if it is inculcated with the same ideas of the old, all we're going to have is the same thing that we just left, right? So there must be an understanding that have something new, you got to have a new, it has to start up here. It has to be a new thought, a new way of doing business, a new way of policy, a new way of treating each other, a new way of handling problems. Not always the barrel of the gun, not always sanctions, not always race, not always, because when America gets mad at people, she looks inwardly, and then you see the hammer comes down on the urban community. You see the hammer, and then from that, you see that reflection go right out into the world, and she lays the hammer down on other nations and stuff like that. Most people cannot fathom the idea of a world outside of Western or U.S. domination. So what is happening is America is being brought down by degrees from which she couldn't proceed. And at every stage, when she realizes that she's at this stage, oh man, she really doesn't realize that she's 2 or 3 stages lower than that. This is what God says in the Bible, that he would feed them with derision because of the arrogance and the pompous. Remember Nebuchadnezzar and King. Remember that Nebuchadnezzar and how he says, "Look at what my hands have wrought." Right? Look at this is what America says in words. She says, "Look at what I'm the superpower. The world cannot function function without America. We have to do this. That's Nebuchadnezzar thinking. And we see what happened to the reign of Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. We see what happened. There's a breaking up of American policy. There's a break to break America and to break the Western world. What happened? That was after the trade, right? Because to break the dollar, you got to break the trade in the dollar. To break the military, you got to break the dollar. So there was an article that came out a few days ago. As a matter of fact, give me a second. I might be able to pull this up real quick. Hold on one second. While I'm
Isn't
talking,
he always hollering about he's
excuse me, I like
the
to
richest country on the planet, and about how about the Americans, the richest, the greatest, the greatest thing that ever lived. What do your scriptures tell you about the rich man? The rich man is the one that God went after for his evils done to everybody else. But naturally, the rich man ain't gonna sit around and talk about God hit me
and his arrogance
because of my evils. Yes, you can't see him doing anything that's not what he's been doing for in the previous year. He can't change. His fathers came and stole and robbed, and so now he's stealing and robbing.
I want to get to these two articles. I thought it was one, but it's two actually. And this is on RT.com. And the first one was published November 25th. Yeah, November 25th. And the title of this article, and remember we're talking about the breaking of American power, the breaking of Western domination. We know that the British sterling pound is tied to the dollar. We know that the euro is actually a U.S. project. We know that it is tied to the dollar. So if you break the dollar, guess what you do? You break the sterling pound, the pound sterling, and you break the euro, the three major currencies of the Western world. So this article, it says world is shifting from west to east. BRICS International Forum president says. Now listen to this. It says, and the president, I think his name is Purnima Anand. It says, the trading bloc offers a new model of growth. Stop right there. Stop right there. Remember what I just said to you? To have something new, it has to be new thought. Because when we just think about people who are trying to lose weight, and they've tried for years and years and years and years and years, but the method is the same. You have no limited or no progress in that endeavor of losing weight because you have no new thought. And so you continue the old way of, and so get the old way of results. Or you might start off losing it and then you revert back to that old way of thought because that is what is ingrained in you. That's why there's a need for something new, economically, politically, socially, morally, ethically, everything. There's a need across the board. There's a need for a new wave of thinking. And this is something that is not acknowledged in the alternative media or in the mainstream media. But we'll acknowledge it and we're going to talk on it. But listen what it said. The trade bloc offers a new and equal rights and opportunities for members. Purnima Anand says, well, that is totally opposite of American, British, and European rule because it is do as we say, not as we do. The rules-based order is based on our rules and the orders that we give to the rest of the world that they must follow, that we can disregard anytime we want to. That's what that is. So there's a whole world being fashioned outside of the Western world order. And it goes, it says, editor's note. It said, well, let's go down. It says, the role of BRICS on the global stage, BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. That stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, what's important about this? I'm going to tell you something that's important about this. There are 32, I believe it's 32, and they're messing with the stream again. They're messing with the stream. There are multiple Latin American nations like Argentina, the BRICS. You see in the Middle East, you see Iraq showing interest in the BRICS. You see Syria is making moves to join the BRICS. You see Iran is reaching out for the BRICS. Turkey is reaching out for the BRICS. And then you see all of Asia is now turning to the BRICS nation. So they may turn the group into BRICS plus, because this is an order outside of the domination of America, Europe, and Britain. And this is why America, Britain, and Europe are so hell bent on causing division, causing chaos, starting wars to destabilize neighbors around the BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative that China has put into play, because they don't want a world order coming in. They don't want something that will seize upon fairness and justice. They want to continue to be the parasitic West, because remember, Europe has little to no resources. We see that now with Russia curtailing her oil and gas sales. So Europe has to be a parasite, because they don't have any resources in large amounts. America has them, but not, because she doesn't have the funds anymore, the real term funds, some of them she cannot tap anymore. You understand? So we're looking at something, but let's go further. And Rashid, I'll bring you in. I just want to hit these few points, and then I'm going to get your take on the situation. It says the role of BRICS on the global stage is increasing every day, and many countries are attracted to the economic and stability it offers. Notice it constantly hits on something new, because there's a new thing. People are fed up with the sanctions. People are fed up with the hypocrisy, the arrogance, right? The exceptionalism. So they're looking for something. They're working on something that is new, outside of the control and the parameters of the Western world. And it goes and says this. That's according to the president of the BRIC National Forum, Purnima Anand, who spoke exclusively to RT this week. The forum, headed by Anand, is an independent social, economic, political center working among BRICS nations. The BRICS group of emerging economies currently consists of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The bloc accounts for more than 40% of the world's population and nearly a quarter of the world's GDP. With Western economies in decline, here's something key. With Western economies in decline, many countries, even members of OPEC and OECD, are interested in the stability that BRICS offers. And then noted, and particularly, she mentioned OECD member Turkey, which is currently applying for BRICS membership. Now, I'll stop right there. Let Rashid say something on this issue. Then I'm going to go to the next article. I'm not going to finish reading this whole article. I just wanted to just build your thought up on what is transpiring outside of America and British and European rule. Rashid, what have you to say on this?
Well, you see that everybody is on the East is uniting against. You can't keep misusing people and expect them to continue to do it. The other people are everybody is not stupid. European organizations and stuff, and it's always like we see for it to benefit him. It's not the and until they see that you cannot be a part of his organization and get anything that's good for your country. His whole outlook on life is to steal life. They're parasites. They're leeches, sucking the blood of all the nations to benefit. And when you do anything that he don't like, then he's sending this color revolutions. And now,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Right.
You froze.
Take back Wall Street or whatever it is. In the FBI and all that, is squash that, hang out massive demonstrations from America. They keep their people docile around the world. He takes it and blows it all. It's very hard. His intelligence agencies are all stirring up trouble. Remember, he is the troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, brother, you can go.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we go to the next article, just saying, this is what we're talking about. Well, listen, we're talking about, and so what Rashid is trying to show you is that as long as we're under Western domination, there'll always be instability. There'll always be chaos because they are the ones who benefit from chaos. That's why one of their motto is through chaos, what is it? Through chaos comes their order. That's what
deception
they
we will rule.
Chaos. That is another one. Through deception we will rule. That is one of their mottos. They even have it on one of their patches. But and so there's a longing for the people everywhere because the dissatisfaction has reached nearly 100%. And whenever there's a level of dissatisfaction that is 100% or nearly 100%, then there must be not just a state-to-state change, not just a national change, not just a regional change, not even just a global change. Whenever there's a longing that strong for something new, something changed, then there must be a universal change that takes place. And nobody can stop that once it is put into motion. America can't do it, Britain can't do it, Europe can't do it, the NATO can't do it. And if all of the world would have joined on with it, stop a universal change, because the dissatisfaction of the people have reached such proportions that this demands that universal change takes place. Now, in this article from November 28th, speaking about the BRICS, listen, I want you to listen to certain things in here. Now, mind you, these are articles that I'm reading for the first time with you, but I just so happened to see these articles when I was doing other articles on the blogs, and when I was doing research, or read these along with you. So this article is titled "Russia-led free trade bloc seeks joint payment with BRICS." So now look, China in the ASEAN organization, they use multiple currencies, but the main currency that trade bloc is the Chinese yuan. China has UnionPay, which is accepted in the world. UnionPay, which is a rival to America's payment system. Russia has the Mir payment system. SWIFT. Iran has her payment system. India has started a payment system. And the Eurasian Economic Union is putting together a payment system. Now, this is in conjunction. Now, we got to look at China again, because China has the Belt and Road initiatives. Now, if all of these things connect, then America, Britain, and Europe loses all relevance economically, because now all trade can be transacted outside of the dollar without fear of sanctions and without fear of threat of the stealing of your currency holdings or your wealth. Okay, so listen to this article. Such a move could help cut dependence on Western financial infrastructure, Investia reports. Investia is a Russian news organization, for those of you who are not aware of that. It says the Eurasian Economic Union in setting up a common payment system with BRICS nations. The new Investia reported on Monday. The Russian-led free trade bloc aims to cut reliance on monetary system. What say you, Rashid, on that before we go further? Every nation, every organization outside of NATO is looking for something outside of the dollar, the pound, and the euro. What does that mean for America, Britain, and Europe? And what does that pertain for the people who reside in America, Europe, and Britain?
What I said before, this is new. You never had in this monetary and remember, if he cannot the monetary system, then what happens to get three goods that come from Mark?
Stop. Your mic, they're messing with your mic. I don't know if it's to the audience, but they're doing. Go out and come back into the studio, Rashid. Go out and come back in the studio. Correct your mic. All right. So and we'll get right back on that subject. Go out of the studio and come back in.
All of them waste. This is what's taking place. It's, as he said, from the
so excuse me. As soon as he gets back in, we'll bring him back in to finish his thoughts. But we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue on this line of talk, and then I'm gonna bring in a couple video little clips that I want you to hear for yourself, because we're talking along a total collapse of the Western world. Now, what does this pertain? I want you to understand the seriousness of what is taking place. For so long, Britain, Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, the United States, and all of the European nations were able to put a scam, this three-card money on the. I'm going to bring. I see him back in the booth. I'm gonna bring him in just a second. Remember your thought that you were just saying. I'm bringing you back in. I want you to finish your thought. But let me say this to you all. For so long, they've been able to put over on the people the card money, like Rashid. And so what it was is, we are the wealthy nations. Now, I want you to, for 1 minute, let's just get out of the thought of the Western mindset. And I want you to just think rational for a minute, okay? I want you to think sanely for a minute. Let's exclude America. Let's just look at Britain and Europe, because this is the core of what they call the rich. If they don't have the resources, right? How can they be rich? Their wealth is what you accept them telling you it is, because they print up nowadays. As Rashid said, they don't even print the paper. They just do some keys in a computer, and then they assign you a certain amount of money. So they print up some money, put their people and people who they admire on those pieces of paper, label it money. They put the denominations on that. Then they come and then they tell you your commodities and your resources and your minerals are worth. Then they say, we will give our money for your resources. And you say, oh, that's pretty good. They did the Indians like, right? Giving them beads and shawls and stuff for whole states and cities and stuff, right? That's the scam. And I want you to listen closely to this, because nobody addresses this. Because They are beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries of the so-called rich nations. But this is a scam. I'm going to give you this piece of paper with this denomination up here. I say it's worth $20 or 20 pounds or 30 euro or whatever. I say I'm going to buy a shipment of that, and I'm going to assign a value to that. Oh, this is worth 1,000 euros. And I'm going to give you 10,000 euros for your resources. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to half of it to provide for a third of it to provide the needs of my family. I'm going to take a third of it, refine it, and ship it abroad and trade. Then I'm going to take another third of it, and I'm going to refine it, and I'm going to sell it back to you 10 times what you sold it to me for. Right? And if you ever get out of line with me, I have your resources. I have paper, documents that you got to honor that we don't have to honor. And all I have to do is sanction you and wipe my slate clean with what I owe you. But I got your resources. So I'm a wealthy nation by stealing. I'm telling you, this is the sleight of hand movement. This is the magician's trick. The sleight of hand movement. How in the hell can anybody in their right mind, being unbiased, think that Europe is a rich continent when they have to resort to colonizing and committing atrocities on Africa, and they've done the same in Latin America, and they've done the same in Europe. I mean, in Asia. How is that? Rational thinking won't allow you that. If you rely on me for all of your oil, all of your gas, your uranium, your plutonium, your all of your precious metals and minerals, if you rely on me for that, and how in the hell am I considered poor and you considered rich? And this is why the chaos is being sold, to keep the sleight of hand going. You know, when the magician gets ready to do the trick, he does a sleight of hand to mislead you so that you can look ever so slightly in another direction so he can pull the trick over on you. This is what's going on. I see Rashid down in the booth, but he keeps getting disconnected. He's in the booth. I can't bring him in because he keeps getting disconnected. And let's see if he'll pop up. Nope. To show you what I'm talking about, look at this. You see? So, I mean, he keeps getting disconnected. So, oh man, I tell you, they play with the screen, but we're going to keep going. So let's go a little bit further on this, okay? And when he gets clear, we'll bring him back in here. It says, the EEU, which is the Eurasian Economic Union, was founded as the customs union of Russia. Some people say Belarus. It was established in 2015 and was later joined by Armenia and Kyrgyzstan. In 2016, Vietnam became a free trade partner with the EEU. The union is designed to ensure the free movement of goods, services, capital, and workers between member countries. According to the report, citing the EEU's regulatory body, the plan also envisages the issuance of a single payment card within the two trade blocks. What trade blocks? We're going to find out in just a minute. That would unite, listen to this good. This is why America is destabilizing Central Asia. This is why she continues to try to keep the war going in Ukraine. This is why she continues to push pressure on Russia. This is why she is trying to befriend Venezuela after sanctioning them. This is why she's trying to stoke tensions in Asia to keep this unified front from fully forming. It says, according to the report citing the regulatory body, the plan also envisages the issuance of a single payment card within the two trade blocks. Now we need to find out what the two trade blocks they're talking about are. That would unite the national payment systems of its member states, including Russia and Russia's Mir card, China and China's Union Pay, India and India's RuPay, and Brazil's Elo Pay, and others. America cannot allow that. Britain cannot allow that. Europe cannot allow that, because that is a direct threat to SWIFT's global domination in financial transaction. It is a direct, not only challenge, but a serious threat to dollar, euro, and British sterling, pound sterling hegemony. That is what we're looking at, and that is why you're seeing the stoking of tensions and the so-called outrage of the West on every level against anything Russia, Iran, China, or the rest of the BRICS and EU members. I'm gonna bring Rashid in and let him finish his thought. I hope they don't mess with him. Let's see. I hope we got him. Rashid, it's black on my screen. They are really messing with his thing. This is what I was dealing with. I kept seeing him coming in, but this is what kept happening, and he just got disconnected. See, so that you guys know that they are really messing with the stream. I pull it up for you so that you can see it for yourself. So now let me go into, let's see the comments real quick before I go further. Yeah, that's right, Naeem 88. So the world is spinning out of Western control. StreamYard is saying what? They will allow you to have a show. Oh, Rashid is silly. He's trying to get back on, you guys. But I want you to see, I'm gonna play something that I think I played in the previous show, but it's about the diesel situation, okay? And it's short, it's about 2 minutes, 55 seconds. And then hopefully by that time, Rashid will be up and ready to talk. I hope he keeps the same frame of thought. I'm gonna play this little clip on. So bear with us. We apologize, but we have no control over them bothering the program.
Of course, we're also seeing the energy sector move higher as well today, oil rebounding from a 4-day slide. Let's talk about diesel for a moment here, because growing concerns over the diesel and heating oil shortage in the U.S. as we head into the winter months is really weighing on markets, certainly on investors' minds, with U.S. stockpiles at new lows and the price of fuel at record highs. So we want to bring in Chun-Tze Hsu, who joins us now from Houston with more. And Chun-Tze, I did not realize this until I read your story, but heating oil and diesel are the same thing. And this is something that people have been warning about for a while, this shortage, which is only going to intensify in the months ahead. Give us a sense of how bad it's going to be.
Yeah, right now diesel inventories are the lowest ever for this time of year in the U.S., and it's the worst on the East Coast, where we're most reliant on overseas imports. And what that means is that residents in New England are paying 80% more for heating oil than they did this time last year. And it's just as bad on the other side of the Atlantic, where Europe diesel supplies are going to get a hit when they pivot away from Russian fuels in a few months.
Talk to us a little bit about why. How did we get here? Why is this an issue right now?
Well, we saw a lot of refining capacity shut down in the U.S. and in Europe, and then when demand came back, we just don't have enough to feed that balance. And then when Russia invaded Ukraine, of course, that took a lot of diesel supply out of the market, and that's going to come from the U.S. Gulf Coast, and that tightens supplies globally and on the East Coast particularly.
And one thing as well that I learned from reading your story is that the U.S. is a net exporter of diesel, but last year we actually imported diesel from Russia. All of that is subject to change later on this year when there's some new sanctions that are going into effect.
Yes, the U.S. did rely on Russian fuel to heat a lot of homes in the East Coast when there's a cold snap last winter. And this year, of course, Russian fuel is banned, and the U.S. is going to rely a lot more on Europe to supply that. And we're going to see Europe not being able to step up because of its own energy security at stake.
We talk about sort of the potential hit, the economic hit. Can you give us a sense here of how we quantify that? Where do we expect to see, or where would we expect to feel some of the pain if this continues?
Yeah, because diesel is so deeply embedded in everything, and from manufacturing to transportation, we can expect expensive fuel to raise the cost of everything from a Thanksgiving turkey to electronics. And that's going to fuel inflation just when it seems to be getting a break from lower gasoline prices at the pump. So it's really everybody's going to feel it.
All right, something to keep an eye on, and a great story written today that really kind of breaks down just how deep this problem is right now and how deep it could get.
So that's what we're looking at, systemic breakdowns everywhere. We're looking at the economy collapsing in every area. Now I'm going to try to bring Rashid back in so he can finish his thought, and then we're going to chop it up on some more stuff on the economic, political, and geopolitical arena, so that you can understand all of this stuff, how it's going to play out, why they're doing the things that they're doing. Because I know sometimes it's not rational thinking. You're saying, well, why would Europe do this? They're shooting themselves in the head. But hey, insane people do insane things. So let me bring Rashid back in. Finish your thought, Rashid. Your mic. Your mic. Let's see. His mic. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can get him back on. All right, we got it. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Hold on. It is automatic. It's not you. Hold on. Let's see. Can't unmute your guests because they chose to mute themselves. You're muted. So you have to unmute yourself. I think he's frozen again. And maybe they just don't want Rashid to speak or whatever, because he is coming up against many obstacles. But go ahead, go ahead. There's a lag, Rashid. Go ahead. Unless they frozen them again. Man, I tell you what. They're trying to do anything they can to keep the program from growing. But we're gonna power through it. All right? Now I think he's moving now. Rashid, you're freezing. Well, while he's freezing, let's continue to move forward, and then we'll get him back in the chat. We'll get him back talking or whatever. Let's see. I just showed you about the diesel crisis, right? And we see that America is really facing problems, right? I also want to show you just how bad this thing is, not just in America, but in Europe. I'm going to play a few more clips. Listen to what they're saying about Christmas time, okay? And then we'll go on to some about Europe. Because the policymakers in America and the policymakers in Europe seem to not be grounded to anything sound. You know, when you look at them, you can tell that they are unhinged and they are sociopathic, because why else would you saddle your people, especially in the wintertime, with unheard of fuel costs just to please America, who is self-sufficient almost in certain fuels, which is a sea away from you, but you're doing it. You know why? Because you're tied to the hip in colonialism. You're tied to the hip in imperialism. You are tied to the hip in this expansion of what they call capitalism, which is reality is parasites. And what they do is they leech off resource-rich countries. They leech off technologically savage countries. They leech off countries that they believe that can be a manufacturing base or that can be independent without them, and then they suppress that independence and suck off and siphon off all of the resources, the brain power, the work, the resources, everything. That's a parasite. Parasites are used. What does parasites do? But is in the movies a vampire?
Can you hear me?
A succubus? Yeah, I hear you now. I hear you. Hold on 1 second, Rashid. A succubus, or a leech, or ticks, or bed bugs, or whatever, these parasites, what do they do to sustain their life? They attach themselves to a host that is full of life-giving fluid, and they suck the life-giving fluid from the host to sustain their life and their lifestyle. This is what parasites do. If one person can tell me that this is not the policy of America, the policy of England, and the policy of Europe, and say it with a straight face, I'll eat my computer. Rashid, go ahead. They're messing with his. They're messing with his mic again. It's crazy. Well, we have to deal with that. We really have to deal with it. But let's go further. All right, we're going to play a clip.
Let's bring in former Toys R Us CEO and Storch Advisors founder and CEO, Gerald Storch. Gerald, always great to see you and welcome. Let's first talk about what you think a rail strike would mean for shoppers as we head into the holiday season. It sounds like to me it would mean that supply chain issues would get worse, not better.
Sure, it would be bad and it better not happen. And if it does happen, it better end fast. So first of all, it isn't that it's going to ruin Christmas in the sense that Christmas presents won't happen, because all those are already in the store. It's way too late, 30 days to Christmas, for retailers to be putting things on trains to think they're going to get on store shelves in time for Christmas purchase. So that's not going to affect your ability to get that toy for Johnny or the great sweater you want to get for your wife. But a lot of products will be affected very rapidly, including food. So it could affect your Christmas dinner. It won't affect your presents, but it could affect food very rapidly because so much food is carried by rail, and so much of the feed for the animals is carried by rail as well. So that'd be a major impact on chemicals that go into things we use every day, major impact on the automobile industry. So it'd be very, very bad for supply chain, very bad for inflation, and just sort of reignite this fire in the supply chain that started with COVID.
So the administration put together a deal, a tentative deal, or they appointed a committee to put together a tentative deal. Let's put it that way. The thing that is the issue for the rail workers, for the unions, is paid sick leave. It appears that the tentative deal did boost wages over the next 5 years or so, but it didn't address that paid sick leave issue. And what the unions and the rail workers are worried about is that a Republican House will not be friendly or understanding of its needs. And that's why there's a need for a strike or to make a bigger statement about this right now. So how do you think it shakes out?
Look, I don't know. It's clear they haven't come to terms. That much is clear. They were able to kick it, down the road to get past the election, and it looks like now they'll kick it past the Georgia runoff. But that's the end of the line, so to say. So they're going to have to come to some agreement on this. If not, they'll strike. The Congress can intervene in a rail strike. It's not the kind of thing anyone wants. I don't think anyone can allow this to go on very long. So I think one way or the other, it's not going to keep going. So I don't really think the worst case scenario will unfold here, but we might get right to the edge of the cliff before people, wise up and say this is bad for all sides.
Yeah, and we were talking to Stu Leonard Jr. About higher food prices across the board and how it's impacting meals that are hitting the Thanksgiving table. And he said, well, prices didn't just rise, overnight. And I said, that's true. It's for a basket of goods. And Gerald, we haven't seen those prices fall. That's the issue. We're looking at that CPI number. The market gets excited that it's come down just a little bit. Certain areas of the supply chain have seen a drop, but where people need it most, food and gas, they're still struggling.
Look, I don't think inflation's coming down to the level that the Fed wants anytime soon. That's the reality of what's going on. There's still incredible upward price pressure, not the least of which is because despite all the layoffs we read about, the unemployment rate remains low and the availability of labor is very bad. So the only way to get more people when you really need them is going to be to pay more, and there's going to have this wage pressure on top of supply chain pressure, on top of all the money that's out, on top of everything that's driven the inflation that we've seen. So I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And at the end of the day, when consumers are pressed like that, they spend on necessities like food. There was a headline in one major paper this morning that I had to laugh at. It said, Americans aren't letting inflation interrupt their Thanksgiving. Well, of course they're not. They're going to buy the turkey and have Thanksgiving. My gosh.
Right.
That's going to happen. But they're going to spend more money on that. And they won't have it for other things. So we're going to see that in the rest of the economy. It's like a snake swallowing a rabbit when it bulges out and destroys apparel shopping for holidays, clothing shopping, when it hurts electronic sales, when it hurts other discretionary purchases, when the consumer has to pay for the holiday turkey.
Yeah, that's a great point. And anecdotally, I talked to a lot of people, who are not scrimping on food and gas to get where they need to go for work or whatever, travel, but do say they've, held back on those discretionary purchases, and that's what they're starting to think about. And you sort of wait to see what the tipping point is when you start to see companies reporting lower earnings and that kind of thing. We already see some of these layoffs happening too, so it's a lot to watch. Gerald Storch, we thank you so much for your insight.
My pleasure.
So that's another black swan. So let me try to get Rashid back on, and hopefully he hadn't thrown down. So Rashid, they're messing with you left and right. Go ahead. There is a delay.
Trying to do
it. No, it's amazing. Go ahead.
Trying to do a show here. They have is
They're messing with his mic again. They're messing with his mic again. They're messing with his mic again. Whoa, I tell you.
Why would anyone of
he's trying. Don't give up.
All of now, it just don't make sense.
Keep going. Let's see if they froze them again. Rashid, are you there?
I'm here.
Boy, I tell you, they're messing up. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Okay.
Go ahead.
As I was saying, why would allow somebody in the West, and so now they're doing this to their second take charge of the world stage, and the West don't like.
Yeah.
All.
You're breaking up. Yeah. Down at the bottom, it says excellent connection. So that's not on our end. That's not on our end. This is StreamYard and YouTube doing this. I screenshotted it while he was trying to talk to you all. From my dashboard, my YouTube dash, me that this is it has excellent connection. So, and we have a backup internet thing. So if there's a problem with the internet, it is not on our end. It's not on our end. It's on their end. And this is being done purposely. But since they continue to interrupt Rashid and pop up words, I hope he keeps trying. I hope he doesn't get frustrated and stop. But I want to get to a few things, like I said, because we just saw another black swan. We just showed another black swan. And so we're gonna keep along this line. I want you to hear what this clip is.
Let's bring in former White House OMB Director Russ Vought for more on this. Russ, what conditions, first of all, are our finances in right now? I mean, tell us how desperate people. These numbers kind of, your eyes glaze over when you hear them. But how could this desperate situation that our finances are in affect the economy?
Yeah, they're not good. We have a terrible fiscal situation. We're $31 trillion in debt. People talk about trillions as if it's drinking water. They throw it around constantly. Nothing is a real proposal unless it's in the trillions. And it just adds and adds on top of an unsustainable situation. And we are facing high level 40-year highs in inflation. That's only going to continue. Republicans in the Senate have an opportunity to change that. They have an opportunity to let the cavalry arrive in January, and they've got to use their filibuster to block this bill. I think they have a shot to do so and allow them to rewrite these policies and start cutting spending in the new year.
You know what really bothers me, and a lot of people I talk to, they say, you know, we still don't know where all that money is going. I mean, we've spent trillions of dollars over the past several years, part of from the pandemic and then part of it from President Biden's new way of looking at the economy. And we don't know where a lot of that money is going. Now, as former head of the OMB is supposed to track all the money that's spent. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's their job. It's one of their responsibilities. I don't think they're doing their job, are they?
This administration has been remarkably untransparent, and I don't know if OMB is doing it or just not releasing it, but it needs to be done, whether it's COVID funding, whether it's funding for Ukraine. I mean, we're going to talk about another $38 billion for Ukraine.
Right.
Where did all the money go in the first place? And I think on every single level of government funding, we've got to be tracking it and figuring out how it can be pulled back so that we can get a handle on our fiscal situation in the new year.
You mentioned.
So, Rashid, you back on. I'm gonna let you get the first word. See, they disconnected them again. It's crazy, I tell you what. But listen, why is it that America is so invested in Ukraine? Huh? Why? I'll tell you why. Let's go to a little clip here from Zbigniew Brzezinski, okay? We'll go to this little clip. I want to read something to you all. And this is one of the main points of American thought. And remember that Victoria Nuland, Hillary Clinton, and a whole bunch of these others, like Robert Kagan, with whom she's married to, Robert Kagan. You see all of these guys like Paul Wolfowitz and all of these other these people have a ethnic connection. Believe me when I say that. I won't go any further on that because YouTube will kick me off. But at the same time, all of these people hate Russia. And it goes down to their very core. And they are hell-bent on destroying Russia. All of these people seem to transition from Republican to Democratic administration. And if the main ones don't, the underlings do. And as soon as it's right, they pop back in. How is it that these people can continue to dot in and dot out of these administrations? And then the people at home wonder why this stuff is going on. Why is America's doing this? Why we don't get any benefit out of this? Why is Europe doing? We don't get any benefit out of this. This is doing this, and this is destroying the economy because you have sociopaths like them that are held by their policy, care less what you think. That's why they ignore what you say, and they do what they say, and they manipulated the media outlet, media online, the social media platforms. They manipulate all that and pray for Ukraine, and you have people having flags of Ukraine on them, and it's outrageous. Ukraine never prayed for you. Tell me the last time Ukraine ever sent any help to urban America or even mentioned urban America. You tell me one time when Ukraine was over in Africa trying to help rid Africa of the colonialists that's over there. You tell me when did Ukraine go over there and shed a tear for the Latin American nations that are under the thumb of American imperialism. You tell me if Ukraine tried to go into Asia and to free those who are still locked in the Eurocentric mind frame of colonialism. Tell me when Ukraine did that. And if you can pinpoint the time, the date when Ukraine did that, then we'll pray for them. But until then, Ukraine can go to hell with gasoline draws on. You can believe that. As a matter of fact, it's enough for you to see how they treated foreigners and how they mistreated black people when they were trying to leave Ukraine. I tell you, I see Rashid He's moving in the background. So I'm going to try to bring him in. There's like a 10-second delay. I don't know why, but there's like a 10-second delay. And I'll try to bring Rashid in. And if he doesn't respond today, then I'll go back to talking and we'll try to get him back in here. But let me try to bring him back in. The floor is yours, Rashid. I know the brother is getting fed up with them doing like this. So he cannot, he's frozen on the screen. So we're gonna keep along. See, I call the ace and a spade. But I'm gonna say something that these people have. This is one of their main objectives. Let's scroll down. Go ahead.
The nations of the nations of the West.
I don't understand what's going on. It's saying Rashid is being kicked from the studio. Rashid, oh. Oh, let me text him 1 second. Let me see and see. Don't give up. Hold on 1 second. All right, here we are. I text him back, let him know to continue to get back on. So you see this stuff in real time. But anyway, listen, this will not yet get me away from the line of thought we're on. So Zbigniew Brzezinski, you see his daughter, Mika Brzezinski, who is on, I don't know if she still is, but years ago I used to see it. She used to be a co-host on Morning Joe on MSNBC. That's his daughter. And his student, whom he mentored in politics, was Barack Hussein Obama. Okay? So I just want to let you know that. All right? This is what he said. Without Ukraine, I'm quoting him now. Without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be an empire. But with Ukraine's suborn and then subordinated, Russia automatically becomes an empire. That's why they are so wrapped up in Ukraine. America sees the emergence of Russia as its threat because Russia is the only nation that has more nuclear weapons than she does. Russia's military is better than the United States military. It just doesn't have the reach that the United States military has. And America's policy is to not allow any rival or combination of rivals to emerge as her peer or peers. That's her stated policy. So what better way to go after the two greatest rivals of yours, who? China and Russia. What are you doing? You stoking tensions with Ukraine, and you're in the Baltics and the Caucasus. So you're trying to keep the former Soviet Union nations divided and looking west. And then in Asia, you with mouth speak, you say, I honor the one China policy, and yet you do everything you can for Taiwan to officially secede from the nation of China. If you continue to divide, you believe that you will have them focusing inward or trying to put down movements of secession. That leaves you room on the international stage to dominate and cement your position. That's what you're doing. I'm no fool. The people who are watching and listening are no fools. And we understand exactly what is going on. I see Rashid back in the booth. Let's try this again. Let's see if we can bring him back. Go ahead, Rashid.
Can you hear me? It seems like they don't want me to say anything on the show today.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
as I've been trying to say, why would allow the people of to control it? They're not going to do it, and they're waking up to that. This is the reason why the West is. It is a new world order, but they ain't controlling it. And this is the reason why they're so mad and see this. But go ahead on, brother. They keep throwing me off, so I'll listen to you.
Well, right now you're clear. So if you're in your mind, say what you have to say, because right now I'm hearing you clear. I guess the brothers. So we'll go into something else. So when we look at this situation, know it for what it's worth. The economic component, the political component, the technological component, the military component or geopolitical component, all of these are working in tandem. It is no coincidence that America is sanctioning Russia and then sanctioning Russia's tech industries, right? And sanctioning anything that Russia uses for capital, right? The same thing is going on with China. America is now attacking TikTok again. America is now attacking China's the chip industry. America is now put a ban on selling. Now I want you to think of the insanity of this, okay? Because most people don't. And every time I look at news, I'm like, man, does anybody even get this? Does anybody even understand what is actually going on? Think about this. America has just introduced bans, chip bans on China, right? Even though China is now self-sufficient. And I put up articles on that before. But China still buys volumes of Western chips to fill orders for Western nations. But here's something. Every time America wants to economically or technologically, she uses national security as the trump card so that she doesn't have to explain to the people the truth about what's going on. She fears China's dominance of that particular field. And so she wants to try to hinder the dominance of China or the rise of China in the tech industry. So what she does, she says on national security grounds will prevent this. Now, here's the crazy part about this, okay? You sanction China on certain technology, right? Certain technology you don't want them to have, and they already probably have them. And yet you still want China to trade in dollars, and you want China to ship you 93 to 95% of all goods on your shelves. Do you see the madness in that? The lunatic, the same when we're looking at Russia. You want to supply Ukraine with weapons. You want to send in covert ops into Ukraine to fight against the Russians. And when your covert ops get captured or killed or injured, you start whining on the news. They must be treated with the utmost respect. You didn't say that when the Ukrainians executed 10 Russian soldiers. The double standards here. The world is fed up with this stuff. You look at how America is flooding Ukraine, which are doing no good. And you look at how America is sanctioning Russia's industries and sanctioning Russia's currency and sanctioning Russia's markets, okay? But yet she makes exemptions for the things she needs to Russia. The insanity. I can sanction you because I don't want you to get ahead, but don't you dare sanction me. This is the mind of a lunatic and a crybaby. See, a bully that has dominated so long that they don't know how to take it when it's somebody that's on the block now that's ready to square off with you. See, in the hood, we say square off with you, you know, meaning that, okay, you've run it so long, but you're not going to disrespect me. I don't care what you do over here, but now you're violating my security. You're violating my space. Now, if you continue to violate my space, I just want you to know, I'm gonna send us a couple shots here with these hands to let you know that if you continue to do it, you're gonna have to square off with me. You're gonna have to see me as a man. In America, she's not used to nations being able to talk to her mano a mano, economically, politically, and militarily. This is something new because the Western world has dominated for centuries. And now that you have opposing powers who are in tandem or working in unison to remove an unjust and unfair system, America is outraged. Britain is outraged. Europe is outraged, right? How dare there be war in Europe? Europe wasn't crying only when Europe was waging war in Africa. What's the difference? Oh, I forgot. Burrell already told us that Europe is considered the garden and everything out there is savages. You see? Europe can moan and cry, whine and bemoan herself and try to and weep over influx of what they call migrants. But they don't cry, weep, and moan when destroying nations, the infrastructure of governments that make nations viable and secure for the citizens. So when you destroy these structures, people are forced to flee. All the people are getting is a view of the people fleeing. Oh, they're fleeing here because of our freedoms. That's America. That's Europe, right? They're fleeing here because of our freedoms. Everybody knows they're here because of the sanctions that you have put on their governments, the overthrow that you have put on the leaders of those countries, the assassinations, the destabilization thing, and the destruction of government institutions in those nations. So everything is destable. You see gun war, you see gang war, you see violence, you see because of US, UK, and European meddling in these nations. So don't just say there's an influx of refugees in on your border because of your freedoms. No, there's an influx because you took their freedoms. You don't like to hear that, do you? When somebody hold a mirror when you're thinking good and in reality you're ugly, or you think you lost 20 pounds and you look at in the mirror and you see that you gained 40 pounds. You don't like to look at that. But that's America, the UK, and the EU. They don't like the mirror held up to them because they still believe that they are the exception to the rules. So again, we see the collapse of the Western world. And if you don't believe that just shooting off his nose in spite of his face, remember we have an inflation problem here. I just played this stuff. And we have a supply problem with diesel, with food, and all of this stuff. And yet they still continue to antagonize nations that trade with them, nations that supply crucial parts of their economies, nations that fund their budgets. Tell me if that is not insanity. That would be tantamount to you relying on me to pay your mortgage and your car note and give you money to your children and to do the things that you would do in a normal family. And then you're coming arming my neighbor with rocks and bottles to throw through my window. And then you say, you get to my neighborhood and tell everybody, let's sanction them. Don't let them come in your yard. Don't let them. Do you understand that the benefits from me helping you would cease to be? And you chopping off your arms and legs and ears in spite of your body? But lunatics, sociopaths, and berserkers can't recognize that because they are too lost in the illusion of what they used to be and the power and the influence that they used to have, you know, and that drives them toward, okay? And look at Lagarde. She's a criminal. The the EU bankstress, I call her. You remember she was under investigation for fraud and all other kind of things. And all of a sudden, got to be the European finance minister or the central bank chief, meaning that she controls the money, right? Isn't that amazing how these criminals get to hold the top and most influential positions? And while they're doing that, the people continue to get fed a buffet of ignorance, right? But listen to it.
Headline inflation, the one that we look at most, has hit its highest reading in October, 10.6%. Core inflation has been very high as well, at around 5%. And I would like to see inflation having peaked in October, but I'm afraid that I would not go as far as that. I think that there is too much uncertainty, particularly in one component, which is the pass-through of high energy cost at wholesale level into retail level, to assume that...
I'm going to replay this, but I wanted you to, she said, there's too much uncertainty. And she's talking about because of the rising prices of fuel that Europe needs. Now, check this out. Had Europe not issued not one pack of sanctions, not two pack of sanctions, not three batches of sanctions, but about 8 of the sanctions on Russia, they wouldn't be in this fuel crisis. And they continue to get together and try to ban other commodities that they are resource poor in. I mean, common sense is not so common today. But when you're looking at a lunatic or a sociopath and you're looking at their policies and how they can blame everybody else, but never sits back and look at themselves and say, you know what? All of this is on me. My policy moves are what cause these things to happen. No, you double and triple and quadruple down on it. And then you're wondering why you're suffering. This is like a person experimenting on themselves, and they take a razor blade or a knife and nick themselves, and they say, ouch, that's a little blood coming out. And then go harder, ouch, I'm bleeding bad. And then say, you know what, let me try the chainsaw. Cut your arm off and you're bleeding everywhere. You say, I wonder why I'm bleeding and hurting like this. Well, the person with common sense would tell you, because you are crazy as hell. You just did that to yourself. But the sociopath, I gotta sue the knife maker. I gotta sue the chainsaw, putting the blame on everybody else, except the policies are pushed and carried out by themselves. That's what, I mean, it is clear. I want you to listen to what she said. Okay.
Headline inflation, the one that we look at most, has hit its highest reading in October, 10.6%. Core inflation has been very high as well, at around 5%. And I would like to see inflation having peaked in October, but I'm afraid that I would not go as far as that. I think that there is too much uncertainty, particularly in one component, which is the pass-through of high energy cost at wholesale level into retail level, to assume that inflation has actually reached its peak. It would surprise me. Obviously, in the longer term, inflation will decline. If only because of our monetary policy, number one, but also because bottlenecks that have been putting pressure on supply will gradually fade out. But when you look at the drivers behind inflation at the moment, whether it is food and commodities at large, or whether it is energy, we do not see the components or the direction that would lead me to believe that we have reached peak inflation and that it is going to decline in short order. I think that whenever I ask my top-notch economists at the ECB and I ask about the risks, the answer that I get for the moment is that risk is to the upside without qualifying the upside. So that's how we perceive inflation at the moment, and that prompts us to continue to tame inflation with all the tools that we have. And as you very well noted, the one that is first and foremost efficient in the circumstances is the interest rate.
So, in words, after all that talking about, she believes that inflation will go down sooner or later. She talks about inflation, and she talks about uncertainty, and she says in certain areas she talked about high fuel prices, right, and then commodities, bottlenecks. Now I want to break this down so that you can understand this. Okay, let's go to some definitions first, and then we'll break this down so that you can understand this. Because here we give you definitions so that you can understand what is being said to you. These people talk over your head, and you notice that they were not talking to the average. She was not talking to the average person. She was talking to her colleagues. So it was being presented as though she was talking to the people. But if you looked in the audience, those were her colleagues. So she was talking over the audience that everybody thinks she was talking to, and she was talking to her colleagues, right? And everybody knows that inflation is not at 5% in Europe. We know that. But American Europe likes to fudge numbers a lot. So we're going to go into something real quick, and we're going to address the word inflation. According to the dictionary, means a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. That's what inflation is, okay? Remember that. Remember what I just said to you. She said there is a high risk, listen, of uncertainty. Now, after giving confidence that inflation is going to drop, she does a double take, right? What? These are hustlers. These are hustlers in suits. I'm telling you this. So she doubles back and says there's a high level of uncertainty. And she tells you where that uncertainty comes from. Inflation and those commodity prices. So check this out. According to the dictionary, the word uncertainty means unpredictability, unreliability, precariousness, doubt, qualm, misgiving, apprehension, quandary, and dilemma. So what she's telling the people, that there is a unpredictability about the situation that we now face, because what we now face in policies, in politics, is unreliable. We're in a very precarious situation, and there is much doubt and qualm and misgiving through the political establishment, and the leaders have high apprehension, quandary, and they're in a dilemma over how to remedy the situation of inflation. Now, what is inflation again? Inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in purchasing value of money. Boom. Now, China is Europe's largest trade partner, right? Russia is Europe's largest gas and oil supplier and commodity supplier and gold supplier. Now, why did I mention that stuff? Because in a few of the packages that the European Commission and the European Union issued against Russia was the capping of the oil, the capping of the gas, right? The cancellation of insurance on any vessels that are carrying Russian gas to European ports. The ban on buying Russian gold, which Europe has none. So you're capping spending euros to get some tangible in your safes, right? Because you're mad at them. You are capping oil and gas from Europe, even though from Russia, even though Russia supplies you with 40% of all of your natural gas needs and about 20% of your oil needs, and 40% of all of your fertilizer and sunflower oil and all this. So you capping it, and then you're wondering where the uncertainty coming from. It's because of your policies. See, the policies of you all will dictate the fall and collapse of the European Union and its monetary system. It also dictates a fall and collapse of the UK, because the UK, while sanctioning Russia with all this brouhaha, is paying double, and the European Union is paying double and triple and quadruple the amount that it would normally pay to Russia, so that people can offload Russian oil from the main ships and transfer them to other ships and put them under other nations' names. And then the oil barons go sell it to them at a markup price. They bought it for $70 a barrel. The barons sell it to the European Union and Britain for about $130 a barrel. And you're wondering where your budget deficits are coming from. You're wondering where the instability is coming from. You wonder where the decline in your monetary system is coming from. Insanity. And this is happening with America too, because look at this. You don't know, but I will inform you that Russia is responsible for the supply of 20% of all U.S. power and the nuclear power plants. You don't know that, right? Russia is responsible for 20%. It's roughly 20 to 25%, but I just use the lowest of it, 20%. Because it sells the United States after, I think it was in like the 90s, they did a deal where Russia would sell high quality uranium and plutonium to fuel the United States nuclear power plants at a rock bottom price. So now those plants have to quadruple and triple their money and find alternatives to Russian, the quality of Russian plutonium and uranium and the quantity. And then we look at Russia also selling oil and gas to the United States also. People don't know that. So now you're sanctioning a nation that sells you that stuff. Then the commodities that they sell. And now let's turn to China. China produces, ships 90 to 95% or 93 to 95% of all goods on U.S. shelves. You sanctioning China. You're in a chip war with China. You're in a tech war with China. You are provoking China by sending ambassadors and congressmen to the island of Taiwan or Chinese Taipei. You tell me where is any rational thinking in that? Huh? And you tell me how sound America and Europe's doctrine is to antagonize the two biggest investors in their economies. And if we look, then we can see where the inflation comes from, because we already talked about the merging of the EU, the Eurasian Economic Union, with the BRICS and with the Belt and Road Initiative, right? And we see the nations reaching outside of the dollar for their own monetary system, which weakens the dollar, which weakens Americans' influence, which weakens the unbridled power of American and political clout, and in turn, by extension, weakens Britain's political clout, military clout, economic clout, and then by extension, weakens the European Union military, economic, and political clout. And we see all three are suffering from the drag-on effect of currency manipulation and slicing off your nose in spite of your face. This is insanity at the highest level, and nobody speaks about this stuff. All right? And they tell, oh, make America great. How the hell can you make America great when America continues to do mad things, insane things? Huh? You got to go to the issues. Stop skating the issues and go to the core of what is troubling the world. And without addressing the issues, that would be like a doctor. You go to see a doctor and you tell the doctor, you know, I'm losing my hair, my teeth are falling out, my stomach is so sour and I can't hardly hold anything in it, and I go up constantly. I can only, excuse me, I can only drink water from time to time. my behind is hurting, it's bleeding constantly. And the doctor looks at you and say, oh, okay, take this aspirin here, and take this Band-Aid, put this Band-Aid over the part that's bleeding, take this aspirin, maybe that'll help the pain. And you're looking at him like, man, what the hell are you doing? You're not gonna do any x-rays, you're not gonna do any examination of me? Because all that is a telltale sign of cancer. So if the doctor not address the core issues or the or what lies at the heart of the patient cancer can metastasize and it can grow into a death spiral. The same with the American Empire, the British Empire. They only address superficial issues so that they can keep the people at bay. They don't address the cancer which lies at the core of their fall. They don't address the cancer that lies at the core of their policy moves. They don't address those things. And this makes for the collective and arrogance and acting like you don't hear or you don't see it, so you can't speak it. That won't yet stop the fall. You have to get to the core, right? And when the doctor does his examination and he finds out the symptoms and the cause of your symptoms, then he tries to prescribe to you the best method to remedy those symptoms. But if the doctor never examines you and never really fully understands what you're suffering from, then you can become a victim of the disease which is in you. That's America. That's Britain. That's the European Union. That's all of it in a nutshell. That is real. So we see all of this stuff. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm gonna let a couple clips play because I want you to see the mind state of these people. Man, yeah, sometimes I have to shake my head, and sometimes when I'm talking to family members or talking to friends or talking to colleagues or something, I shut up sometimes because I'm saying that people are doing this stuff. What's common sense is not common anymore. So if you have common sense, do not take it for granted. Be thankful to God for opening up your eyes to see these things, especially in a time of the complete collapse of our world and a universal change which is underway. All right. But I want you to see what these people are saying, and I want you to hear what they're saying. And if you don't understand, we're going to go into the definitions to make you understand so that you can see very thorough and very clear and in depth on what they're trying to convey to their colleagues and talk over the people. Okay. That's what we try to do here. Give you the real. We don't care if we alienate people. We don't, none of that stuff. You know, we call an ace and a spade, and we're going to continue to do it. And whether you get mad or not, don't look. If it was just one person here listening, that's cool with me. And if I was just playing to an audience, as long as I'm telling you the truth, it doesn't matter. All right? So I want you to hear what they're saying about America's behavior, and I want you to hear about what even one of the so-called leading U.S. economists, I think the one about America's policies first, then the showdown in Ukraine, even though he has to sugarcoat it a little bit and he doesn't want to be exiled, so he has to agree with America. But if you listen to him, in his agreement with America, there's a lot of disagreement with America. You understand what I'm saying? But let's first go to this clip.
Well, let's cast our minds back 4 years or so to the Donald Trump era, where actually Kim Jong-un and Trump were embracing each other, and actually there was a rapprochement going on. Trump had basically cut through all of the diplomatic nonsense that the State Department, it's almost like a firewall, really, with these bureaucrats that the deep state set up. And Trump had managed to cut through that. In order to literally sit down with Kim Jong-un in North Korea and say, look, listen, you know, we can get along, we can start to trust each other from the presidential level down, and that's all, it seems, been falling apart. But in the backdrop to all of this, I think we've got to just look at the nuclear weapons era after the Second World War, as the United States became initially the sole controller of nuclear weapons, and other countries then got on the nuclear bandwagon. Well, of course, it wasn't a bandwagon, because they realized that this was the weapon of the future, and anybody who had this weapon would be able to intimidate, not only other countries, but their own population into going along with various plans to do with possible wars. And so I think if you go back to 1956, where the British were attacked in Egypt and the Americans refused to help us, I think that was the right thing to do, actually, because it was the end of the colonial era. But the Americans at that point really started to on a plan for what was an attempt at world domination. And I think we have to just be realistic about this. The Americans don't say this. They never say this in any official capacity. Right. But anyone that pays attention to world affairs knows that that's what the United States wants. And there's only one thing which will stop you being dominated by the United States, it seems. And other countries like Libya, etc., Iraq, etc., have realized this, and that is nuclear weapons are the only things the Americans understand. If you've got nuclear weapons, they won't attack you. But if you haven't, they may do, and at some point they probably will do. And so I think the Americans have actually made this situation for themselves.
So we're going to go to another short clip, and then come back with Jeff Sachs.
NATO expansion to Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and to the former Soviet Union, the engineered coup in Kiev in February of 2014, the supply of vast amounts of money and weaponry to the Ukrainian government since the 24th of February of this year, the intensive militarization, the intensive increase in America's military presence in Southeast Asia and also in the Far East, specifically adjacent to Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, the vilification and demonization of Russia and China, the construction and activation of a missile system in Eastern Europe and in South Korea, which can also be made offensive, is all designed to preserve and strengthen American global hegemony. Washington understands that the only two countries which can challenge successfully American global supremacy is Russia and China.
So maybe you needed to see it from a person that's not of my skin complexion. I just told you that. This is why the chaos is reigning. This is why there's a threat of war, more war. Think about this. Do you think that there would be a war, a threat of war, if America had a military within the war? Now, I want to just present something to you all, right? Because America continues to spend trillions of dollars a year, and she justifies it on her war machine, all right? And you ask her, why do you have nuclear weapons? Because remember, America's posture, her public changed under Joe Biden, even though all of the presidents had the same posture. It's just that he came out and stated it, that now America would no longer reserve nuclear weapons for second strikes. America would use states in the first strike and non-nuclear states. That's the stated policy now. That's the stated policy. So what was held in the back door is now open. I want to ask you all, when you ask the American military and the American government, why do you have nuclear weapons? For America's security, to prevent being blackmailed by other nations, and to fight if our national core interests are at stake. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year to keep up this nuclear I wouldn't say threat. I would say this nuclear weapon system that America has. Now, then you ask the United States, because I'm advancing the thought to you all. You ask the American military, well, why are you in all of these nations around the world? Oh, it's to protect American interests and to keep them from us and to keep them from doing this and to keep them from doing that. It is for American national security. Hold up, stop right there. Stop. On one hand, you say the nuclear weapons are for that. The nuclear weapons are not enough from attacking America's homeland. And if they're not, then you need to do away with them and spend that money in a more proficient way. Or is it that the military bases over there can't do it? And if that's the case, then they need to be dismantled and you need to come home. So if two like that, and you're saying, well, both of them work in tandem, then it has to be an ulterior motive. And what is the ulterior motive? I want to rule and I want everybody to be subjects of my rule. Okay? Now, Reef Omar, he made too many points that I couldn't even put up there. But one of them was when they say inflation is going to decline, I take that as inflation is going to go up even higher. I say the same thing. And when they talk about these low numbers of inflation, I don't even give those any credence. No, even I don't look at them a second time because I already know those are lies. Those are lies. You know. And yeah, I spoke on this the other day, and Reef brought this up. He says inflation is a hidden tax or fiction robbery. Now, I didn't say that part, but that is a poignant point right there, and I'm going to take that from you. I'm stealing it. I'm stealing it. I'm telling you. I'm gonna do an America and European a move on you. I'm going to steal your point. This is true. I've been telling you for so long that inflation is a hidden tax. Because you have to pay $1. When the value of your currency declines, you have to use more of that currency to buy less of a product. So you're being taxed, and you have to work more to earn what you have earned when you worked less. So it's a hidden tax on the people. But it's not so hidden anymore. But it's yeah. Let me put this up here. Addressing the cause would mean that true with people. That's what I'm talking about. But they will never be truthful with the people, because then the people will want to know how far down the rabbit hole the exploitation and the thievery goes. And if they open that wormhole, then you're talking about America, the UK, and Europe hanging from posts or in the guillotine. That's what we're watching. We're watching a complete fall of a world. I'm continuing to tell you this. So now I want to go back to something I was telling you about Jeffrey Sachs. I think that's his name, economist. He made some poignant points, but you could tell that he had to still stay in line with the American side of, and oh yeah, Russia, there's no justification for Russia doing what she's doing. Even though America threatened to invade Cuba because Russia had missiles in Cuba. She threatened to invade. People get that. And the blockade continues today. She had a military blockade on Cuba. And while America is screaming about Russian seizing territory in Ukraine, why hasn't America returned Guantanamo back to Cuba? She's not turned Guantanamo back to Cuba. What the hell you think Guantanamo is at? Huh? The people, really, a lot of us need to use our head for more than hat racks. Seriously. But let's go further. I just want you. And the brother Arif said, "Go ahead, go ahead." I'm going to take it, brother. I'm going to give you credit for it, but I'm going to take it. Let's go to Jeffrey Sachs. Let me see where he's at real quick, because I want you to hear what he had to say, even some cogent points on what is really going on. Okay. This is about 5 minutes. I don't know if I'm gonna let the whole 5 minutes play, but I want you to just listen to him. All right, and listen to the British interviewer justify anything that America and the UK and NATO does. He pushes that to the side, and he always wants to stay on Russia violates this, and Russia. There's surely you know there's no justification for Russia to do this and that. I mean, from the scribes is out of this world, but you got to be wise enough to see this stuff. So listen closely.
With me, the Columbia University professor and director of the Center for Sustainable Development, author of the book The Price of Civilization. Jeffrey, I read your views on this, and you certainly have some transparent views in terms of how NATO's expansion has taken place, and in your view. But now we are where we are, and it's a question of getting out of this before any more lives are lost, or what long-term economic damage done.
Well, Jay Powell has it exactly right. The world is falling into fragmented groups, and there will be extraordinarily high costs from this. The sanctions that the United States and Europe have put on have done a tremendous damage to Europe and the United States and to much of the rest of the world. And we're feeling the brunt of now a strong stagflation, which was the main topic facing the central bank leaders that were in Sintra, Portugal. This is likely a hard landing in much of the world coming up in the next months. I think that our foreign policy strategy, both towards China and towards Russia, has been provocative and divisive for a number of years. This didn't just start now. There was already the U.S. trade wars on China, and then the technology wars, the financial sanctions, and all the rest. We've divided the world, and now we're paying a strong, heavy cost for that.
Right, but let's put blame where blame lies, surely. Whatever NATO's expansion may have been about, or in the 1990s, etc., it doesn't justify, and I see your views, that what Putin did in Ukraine, and there had to be a strong response to that, surely.
Of course, but there should have been negotiation in 2021 when Putin said NATO should not expand to Ukraine and Georgia. I would have been the first one to say absolutely correct. Why do something so provocative, something akin to the Crimean War back in 1853? We shouldn't be having a Black Sea confrontation. So we should have been prudent. Putin said last year, negotiate over the non-enlargement of NATO. Biden said, absolutely not. That's off the table. We are going to expand. We're committed to having NATO not only in Ukraine, but all the way across to the eastern edge of the Black Sea in Georgia. This is a huge expansion of NATO. NATO was a defensive alliance of Western Europe against the Soviet Union, a defensive alliance against a country that doesn't exist. And yet we said it will continue to expand all the way to the eastern edge of the Black Sea. And Russia kept saying, no, for 30 years. I was there at the beginning when this discussion started. Russia was saying, don't do that. Gorbachev was saying, don't do that. Hans-Dietrich Genscher, the German foreign minister in 1990, said, don't worry, we won't move 1 inch. Now, this isn't to say that this isn't to say that that is what started the war. The war was started by Putin. But the United States has been provocative also towards China. And my point, Richard, is we're paying a heavy economic cost. That cost is likely to rise. NATO today is 12.2% of the world population.
Jeffrey, let me jump in here.
Sure,
Jeffrey. Surely you can't deny now however right that your argument might or might not be, and I'm sure there'll be people who'll take issue with it, but you couldn't deny Sweden and Finland now the right to have the protection of the NATO umbrella, having seen what Putin can do. Bearing in mind, he told us straight to our faces, I have no intention of invading Ukraine, up to the very moment that the tanks went over the border.
What is absolutely remarkable is that at the end of March, negotiations were advancing for a neutral Ukraine and for an end of the war. And then Ukraine walked away from the negotiating table at the end of March. And the reason is that the UK and the US pressed them. You can win on the battlefield. You don't have to negotiate non-enlargement of NATO. This was a big mistake. My point is simply that we need this war to end with Russia leaving Ukraine and NATO saying we're not going to fill in the void. Ukraine is going to be neutral. And this is how we could also save the world economy as well as saving Ukraine. It's very straightforward. Russia needs to leave, but the United States doesn't need to fill in afterwards. That's the basic point. We need a buffer.
Right. We'll talk more about it. Jeffrey, I'm grateful to have you tonight. Thank you, sir, always.
A lot to unpack here. A lot of men I really want you to know that I appreciate you guys sticking through the show and to give me your ear just for this time, because most people are too preoccupied with foolishness and he talked about Russia must leave Ukraine. Part of Ukraine was historically Russia. Now, because the Mexicans are still clamoring about California and Mexico and Texas, but America has yet to listen to their and California. Or what about Syria that she's illegally occupying? What about Japan? America still has dozens upon dozens of Indians after World War II. Huh? Do you know that the people of Okinawa, over 80% of the Okinawan island is military base, U.S. military base? Do you know that? That's why the people are protesting every day, but you don't see it on the news. What about South Korea, a country the size of Alabama? America has over 24 military bases there. What about Libya? She's in Somalia. She's in Mali. She's in all of these areas. Djibouti. She's illegally occupying Yemen. She's in Jordan. Okay? But America does not have to leave those bases. What about NATO? They don't have to leave. Why? Because they that those people and those nations are second-class people and citizens and are not really human. Because it's the only way that you can look at this double standard. And also, and I'm not clamoring for Russia to be in Ukraine. It doesn't matter to me. Well, listen, we go back to what I said to you. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was President Jimmy Carter's national security advisor. And from this man, a whole new school of thought was produced. And from him, you have a president who was Barack Hussein Obama. And guess who was Barack's vice president? Slick Jim. Right? So this is what was pushed by Zbigniew Brzezinski. And who is the president today? Joseph, the con man Biden. And it says, without Ukraine, this is Zbigniew Brzezinski. Without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be an empire. But with Ukraine, subordinated and then subordinated, Russia automatically becomes an empire. That's why America and Europe are trying so hard to bleed Russia and Ukraine. Because Hillary Clinton said it is unfair for Russia to be the size that it is, all resources that it has. We should balkanize Russia and take the resources. That's Hillary Clinton. She said that. She said that. Okay? So this school of thought is now in the realm of political discourse. This is the main political discourse. You understand? So, again, they talked about NATO, and they talked about Russia, and they talked about I want you to understand, prior to the Soviet Union collapsing, there were 16 NATO countries. 16. I'm going to say that again. 6. Jim Baker, who was the former Secretary of State, and several, that we would not expand 1 inch to the east if Russia allowed for the reunification. Immediately after those promises were made and Germany was reunified under the West, NATO expanded. NATO went from 16 countries to 30 countries now. But the Soviet Union ceased to exist. To confront what? So they say, but it was actually for world domination. But it was a military organization to confront the Soviet Union. And at the time, there were 16 nations. Well, if the Soviet Union exists, then why the hell have it expanded almost double in size? And why is Georgia and Ukraine on this new list to join? They want Russia and China surrounded, and I mean completely surrounded. Completely. Because if this takes place, America will have a circle of bases around Iran, Russia, China, India, and Pakistan. In South Asia, right? She has them in South Korea. She has them in Japan. That's Russia and China's eastern flank, right? She has them all throughout Central Asia and the Middle East, right? And with the addition of Georgia and Ukraine, it will be a complete ring around her 2 greatest adversaries and her regional adversary. The 2 greater ones are China and Russia, and the regional ones are by chance. And in the midst of all of this, talking about avoiding Ukraine and Russia should pull out, Russia would be a fool to, especially after this meeting with NATO. This is what went down. This came out. It came out at 12:49 this morning, and it's NATO to double down on offer to Ukraine. Bloomberg reports. The media outlet claims an ambivalent statement saying now is not the time for Kiev to join. But listen to this. You think those are concessions, right? Well, you better think again. The foreign ministers of NATO member states are set to reiterate the military alliance's readiness to welcome Ukraine into the bloc in principle, Bloomberg has reported. So why would Russia, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, Russia had nukes that were 105 miles, I believe, between 93 and 105 miles away from the coast of Florida, okay? America said that was a national security threat, and they blockaded they threatened to invade Cuba, right? And they were preparing to go to nuclear war with Russia over this, between 93 and 105 miles from the tip of Florida. Listen to me good. From the tip of the islands of Florida. You know those little smaller islands at the tip of Florida? At the tip, right? They were willing to take the world to nuclear war. But America thinks it's all right to put bases in Ukraine, especially in the Donbass, which she had in the Donbass, so we can't say that she wasn't planning, because the first bases that Russia hit when they went in was the NATO bases, command and control infrastructure in the Donbass. The news didn't tell you that, right? And they took over a base that was a naval facility that was being built by the British on the Sea of Azov, which is right across the water from Russia. So if Russia did not intervene, America, NATO, and Britain would have had naval bases and missile infrastructure, which could have been first strikes into Moscow and in St. Petersburg within seconds. Russia wouldn't have time to even react, a minute at the most. So, and these are Russia, the US and NATO was building up bases roughly 40 miles from Russia. But America was willing to take the world to nuclear war when Russia placed missiles roughly 905 miles from the islands that tipped on Florida's coast. Do you see the hypocrisy there? Do you see the exceptionalism there? Do you see the arrogance there? Then you are blind. The world is headed for war because they are losing. Solente says, when they lose everything. When they lose everything, they lose it. That's what he says, and it's an apt statement. Before I go off the air, I want to place a couple statements on the screen because I'm so glad that the chat is engaged. We do chats, and then YouTube wipes the chat times on some of the shows. So when I go back to look at the chat, it's gone. So on some of the live programming. So I want to put a few more responses up here. All right, here's another from Reef Omar. Russia is very concerned with NATO expansion because they haven't happened in June 1941. Bim, bim, boom, goes the dynamite. And then it says, and next one, it says, it's looking more and more like America has been setting up Operation Barbarossa 2.0. Man. Want to know what he's talking about? Just Google it. Okay, just Google it. This man is dropping truth bombs all over the chat. But just think about that. I want you to think about the arrogance of that. Think about the hypocrisy of that. And the thinking of your exceptionalism. That brings back what I said, brings you the mind of Nebuchadnezzar. Look at what my hands have wrought. I am, and there is none other. And while those things were yet in the mouth, right? What God did, God took the kingdom away from them, right? He brought it down. While these arrogant people are yet galloping around the world, starting wars, the kingdom is being taken from them. But because he who defends everything defends nothing, and you leave your core exposed. And now we're seeing the ramification of an exposed core. We see civil strife. We see a racial divide. We see a wealth divide. We see a social divide. We see a cultural divide that is growing and brewing in America that has all of the elements and the recipe of civil insurrection and civil war. That is what we're seeing. So we're looking at Humpty Dumpty, who has sat on the wall. He didn't just fall down. He is being pushed down by his peer powers and by those whom he steps on within his own borders. And Humpty Dumpty is having a great fall. And no matter how many economists, how many strategists that she gets, no matter how many men of war and geopoliticians that she gets, they will never ever be able to put Humpty Dumpty, the American empire, back together again. Her time is up. This is a new day. I thank you all for joining us on this edition of the Red Pill Diaries. Check us out as we come to you with truth, love, and peace. I love you all, but mama, I love you.